be joining us here since the recording has started. And I could see everybody coming into the room. It's like they're swarming in if we were in a live audience. So just want to let the audience know as they're logging on that we will start the program here in about 2 minutes. All right, let's get started. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Arizona Capital Times Morning Scoop. I'm Gary Grotto. I'm the executive editor of the Arizona Capital Times. And today we're going to be talking about career and technical education districts that everyone knows as CTEDs. And we're going to take a step back and take a brief look at the history of CTEDs, their current status in the state's public education system, and where they're headed in the future. So our discussion for the next hour is brought to you by the East Valley Institute of Technology and Chase Building Team. EVIT has 3 campuses throughout the East Valley for high school students and tuition-based training for adults. And with more than 40 course offerings ranging from 3D animation to fire science, machining technology, surgical technology, welding, you name it, EVIT strives to change lives by loving its students and serving its communities with a college preparatory training experience that produces a qualified workforce to meet the market-driven needs of business and industry. Our other sponsor, Chase Building Team, is a general contractor founded in 2007, and the company strives to provide exceptional and innovative construction service. Chase believes they have great people and a culture that inspires their team to be the absolute best they can be, and the company commits to long-term relationships and creating win-win situations on each project. Thank you both for sponsoring this, because we wouldn't be here today without you. So moving on, I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, we have Dr. Chad Wilson. He's been with us on previous morning scoops before. Dr. Wilson is a superintendent of EVIT, where he's led the CTED since 2019, his 2019 appointment. He's born and raised in Tucson. Dr. Wilson's doctoral degree from the University of Arizona is in education policy and administration. He also holds a master's degree from Northern Arizona University and a bachelor's from U of A. He's worked as a middle school history teacher, principal, associate superintendent, and superintendent. Under his leadership, EVIT has embraced a spirit of staff collaboration and community service that empowers EVIT employees and strengthens EVIT's partnerships with school districts and other community organizations. Together with the EVIT governing board, he has worked to reduce administrative costs and increase support for teachers and students while being mindful that taxpayer dollars are spent wisely. Good morning, Dr. Wilson, and good to see you again.
Good morning, Gary. It's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for giving us the opportunity today.
And next we have Vicente Terran. Vicente is a project director with Chase Building Team. In his job, he's often assigned to major projects to oversee operations and ensure client goals are met on time and on budget. He helps develop detailed construction cost estimates and documentation for project funding authorization. And he helps manage a project's team of architects, engineers, consultants, construction managers, and administrative support, always with an end goal to make sure jobs meet and exceed client specifications, objectives, and design guidelines. Good morning, Vicente, and welcome aboard.
Hey, thanks, Gary, for having us. We really appreciate it.
And our third panelist is Kevin Hines. Kevin is EVIT's External Affairs Coordinator. Kevin is an experienced superintendent with a demonstrated history in education management. He's experienced in educational systems design and program development. Kevin has designed from the ground up and operated 4 unique educational environments, a magnet program in an inner city school, a school for at-risk and adjudicated youth, a large comprehensive high school, and CTEDs. In fact, Kevin shepherded in the state's most recently founded CTED, the Southwest Technical Education District of Yuma, in Yuma. Kevin is also a member of a host of boards and professional organizations, including the Arizona Career and Technical Education District Consortium, which he has chaired for more than 6 years. Good morning, Kevin. Glad you could join us.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning.
And I'd like to remind the audience about our chat today. We have it open and we welcome your comments and questions. We'd like the audience to be involved, and you have probably better questions than I do. So please share them with us. And so I'd like to go ahead and get started then. Chad, or Dr. Wilson, I should say, why are we here today?
Gary, you can call me Chad. I appreciate that. So February is CTE month. And one of the things as a CTED that we believe is really important is that we have the opportunity to share our story. Our story is really vast and wide across the state of Arizona. And so we thought it would be appropriate to talk about the history of CTEDs, the current reality, and then potentially the future of where CTEDs can not only work with our high school students, but our adult students to truly change their lives, and at the same time help usher in workforce development that our state just desperately needs. We're also grateful to have partners like Vicente and Chase to join on this morning scoop, because without those kind of partners, the work we do would not be nearly as rich or as rewarding as it currently is. And so we're here today just to share the good work that we do and hopefully kind of chart a course for where we hope CTEDs go over the next 10 to 15 years.
Great, thank you. And Kevin, can you give us a brief history of CTEDs in Arizona? I mean, they're public education, but they haven't been around that long. I know that there have been, you know, when I was in high school, I went to what they call a vocational school, but CTEDs have just been around about 30 years or so,
About
right?
30 years. Yeah, thank you, Gary. Yeah, in fact, EVIT just celebrated its 30th anniversary. And so it was fortuitous 30 years ago. Our state legislators realized the need for vocational skilled training. And so EVIT started, Legislature Crandall started, and with other legislators, they recognized that they needed to do something a little bit different in order to be able to support the economic development of their communities. So been about 30 years. The latest one is Steady down in Yuma. It's about 7 years old now. And it's the only statewide system for which we have that supports career and technical education. We cover from Kayenta down to Cochise, from Yuma to Kingman, and everything in between. And so there's 14 of us, approximately one for every county. But as mentioned, it's the only statewide system that we actually have in place to support career technical education. So going on 30 years now, Gary.
Great. So, Vicente, you know, Chase is a private company and we're talking about public education today. So tell us about your company's interest in CTEDs.
Yeah, certainly. So for us, it's everything. You know, this is really the pipeline and the future workflow of all the tradesmen, men and women of America, really, that are coming through these programs now. So it's imperative, as Dr. Wilson mentioned, you know, there's certainly a shortage out there in skilled trades, men and women, and there needs to be programs that really start to implement it early on in the youth to understand what those opportunities are out there, what it's all about, getting to work with your hands to really get them excited about the process, excited about what they can be involved in as a career, and really highly consider it as a career, because it's certainly something that is worth their while and can be a really rewarding future for them if they choose to go down that path. So we've been fortunate to get to start to partner with EVIT and other institutions that have this interest to be able to kind of come alongside them and bring in our trade partners, bring in our resources to be able to kind of spruce up that curriculum for the students, really understand where those knowledge gaps might be, and just try to plug in a really useful way, however we can kind of see fit. So we've been really excited about it. We feel like there's a ton of momentum about it right now in the market, and something we're always really interested in being able to make an impact with.
Great. So I just want to answer one real quick question that's on the chat. They asked if a copy of this meeting is going to go out to those that are registered, and a copy of the recording will be available on our YouTube page. And if you just, I can put up a link later on, but or anybody can email me at ggrotto@azcapitaltimes.com. And I will get you the recording. So anyway, you mentioned, Vicente, a shortage in workers, or work shortage. Why is there a work shortage right now?
You know, I think there's a lot of opinions circulating around it. I think one of the big things, and myself as one included, around the Great Recession time, there was a lot of skilled tradesmen and women that actually left the industry and never really returned. And most often, a lot of these skilled trades are very generational. And so to be able to pass that along to your children, to be able to really show them what that looks like, if there's a gap in that workflow, and maybe your mother or father didn't end up working in those trades, then there's a lot of opportunity where there is that knowledge gap for these students and young people that are coming up. So I think that's something to do with it as well, but also the rise in tech and a lot of different opportunities out there in the market where you can do a lot of work off your laptop and sit at a desk if that's something that's interesting you. So there's a lot of different reasons around it, but I think that would be one of the biggest ones, is just coming out of the Great Recession, the work opportunity. But now more than ever, there's a ton of opportunity, and especially if you're, a student that doesn't like to sit at a desk, which I know I was myself. I wanted to be out and about and in the fresh air. This is just a wonderful opportunity that allows them. But I think that's the biggest thing, is being able to make sure there's those opportunities generation to be able to pass it along, or have a program like EVIT's facilitating to be able to teach and coach and have a mentor in the walk of life, because it's really a true profession that's a skill out there.
And Gary, I think it's also, we're really fortunate to live in a great state like Arizona that's very user friendly to business and industry. And I think we've seen over the past 5, 10, 15 years, Arizona has become a major contributor across the country to new growth and new development. So cobbled together with what Vicente said, I just think, it's a good problem to have in some ways, because I think it means that our economy is robust. I think it means that business and industry want to relocate here. And in doing that, there just is a shortage in workforce. And so how can we as CTEDs lean in and help support that?
And can you gentlemen tell me, how say Chase is working with EVIT to, your programs and so forth?
Yeah. Well, I can kick it off, and Dr. Wilson, feel free to chime in as well. We're fortunate to be working with their construction technology programs, their mechanical, plumbing, electrical, and we're actually doing work on the main campus currently, and we're putting them to work. That's the best way to be able to learn, is to be able to put your hands on it. And so we have projects going on site right now, and we're tying them into every stage of that construction process so they can really see what that looks like. They helped us pour some concrete for sidewalks, be able to prep the subgrade all the way into demolition activities and getting ready to start new piping for electrical systems that need to go into the building. So they have a wonderful program there that actually these children and young adults are actually very skilled with their hands at this point. And this just furthers that opportunity for them to kind of really get a real life taste and feel of what a day in the life could look like. And that's how we want to plug in the most organically. How can we actually show what the real day-to-day is going to look like, and be able to have them stand next to a journeyman, stand next to a true expert in that trade, and ask those questions, and be able to really facilitate their learning and be a mentor to them throughout the process.
Yeah, Vicente hit it right on the head. I think one of the things that we really look for, at least at EVIT, and I believe other CTEDs feel the same way, is that when we partner with business and industry, part of what we hope to accomplish is to do exactly what Vicente said, to have our students actually have the hands-on learning experience that they need so well in order to learn the trade. I think oftentimes, students can get the didactic, and that matters, but actually applying that in real world settings is what translates to the learning. And so for our students to be able to partner with Chase and do the work that they're doing around the content that they're learning gives not only a deeper sense of understanding, but also kind of gets the motivation the students need to see where that can lead them as a career. And also too, truthfully, we're not the experts in the field. And so for Vicente and Chase to help work with our students provides our students a much deeper, more robust understanding of the work that has to get done, the content that needs to be learned. So we're really grateful for those kinds of partners. And I think, Kevin, you've had the same experience at Steady.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Excuse me. Yeah, the community and the business industries are really important. I mean, it's a hand in glove relationship. The industry has been very loud and clear, very specific as to what the skills that students need to have. And without their expertise, without their input, we wouldn't be preparing the students adequately enough. So it really is a hand in glove.
And Kevin, the CTEDs, I mean, you don't just build one in an area and just offer, a random set of classes. I mean, the industry is kind of dictating what the CTEDs are teaching, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we do follow a state curriculum. We do have the state standards set out by the Arizona Department of Education.
Right.
But as Dr. Wilson had mentioned, our teachers, actually, we do employ the industry experts to teach those classes. But without their input, we wouldn't know, the nuances or the skills that were really required for that specific industry. And so that's critical in being able to supply us with the latest knowledge and technology for which the students are going to need. The idea is for our students to walk right out of the classroom, right out of the lab, right off the field, and right into industry seamlessly, without recognizing that there's any difference. And if we didn't have industry to be able to help us hand in hand, then we would just be guessing at that. So it's a critical importance for us to be able to have that relationship.
Now, are the industries helping with the funding? I mean, do they provide equipment and that sort of stuff as well, besides the, of course, the state funding?
Yeah, actually, there are about 13 different compliance indicators for which CTEDs, we're probably the most highly regulated, highly looked after, more compliance requirements for CTEDs than probably any other educational institutions. But one of those is, in fact, in order for us to be and meet compliance, we do have to have that relationship with an industry, and they do have to help to support, whether it be materials, labor in kind, donations, but there's absolutely a requirement for every one of our programs to be in compliance that we do have received some type of financial or some type of consideration from industry. We wouldn't be in compliance if we didn't have that.
And can you give us some examples of that, that's going on in the state right now, so that our viewers can go out and look it up on after the show?
Sure. So it also depends on the program and the specific needs for the program. But there may be, I'm going to use welding for an example, a specific welding certification for students that would be able to need to have and to enter into the field. And so it takes a specific set of requirements and equipment for students to be tested on, to be assessed in order to receive that certification. And so industries have either donated equipment for us, space. Oftentimes there's a space issue that some of the CTEDs would need that they're just not able to facilitate on their own because of size. Some of the CTEDs are much smaller than EVIT. And so I would think that just for example, as I mentioned, welding would be one of those. And they're hosting a site and for some of those students to be able to receive their industry certification in welding. So there's all different types, automotive, culinary, medical, all different types. There's partnerships between community colleges and CTEDs. Community colleges are able to provide maybe a facility for a CTED for them to be able to do their practicums and medical assistance. And so oftentimes, because of the requirements of the CTEDs, we do have to rely upon industry and our community colleges in order to be able to facilitate the entire program.
Now, going back to the worker shortage and getting training people to become skilled at these trades. What do what are you guys doing as far as recruitment for CTEDs? I know we talked a little bit the other day, Vicente, that your company goes into the classrooms and has construction days or something like that.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, so from a very early age, K through 12, we'll kind of plug in where we're welcomed within whatever district or team that we're kind of working with. We've hosted construction days before for kindergartners all the way through high schoolers, and kind of make a curriculum for a day, which is a full day of activities, kind of show them how to lay carpet tile, to install acoustical tile, to work on drip irrigation systems, to think about rough carpentry and power tools, and kind of create fun little activities for them to, from a recruitment standpoint, is really just get them excited to have a memory very early on in their life to say, hey man, that was really, really fun when we had that construction days event. I got to hold a bunch of drills and do some drywall mud and do some painting and kind of just get them excited about what they can do and create with their hands, on the construction side, kind of specifically. But, that's where we try to plug in. And I know EVIT does an excellent job reaching out and trying to really continue to, I guess, filter down those students and who's really got that interest to be able to bring them into a program that gives them more technical knowledge and kind of puts a better curriculum around how they can learn and be best fit for the market.
And I think we're in a really interesting space, Gary, as CTEDs. When we go back a few years ago to the pandemic, one of the things that we realized is that at EVIT, of our 42 programs, 38 were identified as essential services. And so, as the country was struggling to get its feet underneath it, it was the industries that we work with that were holding us all up. And I think what we find in that is that the narrative then is beginning to shift from when I was a kid. People would look at the work that we do here through a very different lens, I think, than what they're looking through it now. People now realize is that you can make an incredible wage in the professions that we support, and the professions we support are sustainable during the ups and the downs. One of the things that was most surprising to me when I became the superintendent at EVIT is how many business and industries we connect to in ways that we wouldn't have even thought about. Our diesel mechanics get picked up by the mining industry. Our welding instructors, our welding students get picked up by the mining industry. And so there's just so many different on-ramps and off-ramps that I think we are beginning to realize as a state and as an economy that I think is leaning favor towards people seeing this as a viable pathway. In EVIT's case, we also offer adult education. And so the idea of being able to work with a student, but potentially bring him or her, their parent in for retraining or upskilling or uptraining so that they can move on to a different career. I think we're just starting to see the trend happening across the country that CTE isn't just for, quote, those kids, it's for every kid.
And what's the current status of CTEDs in the state? Are you guys running strong? Your enrollment up? Getting plenty of money from the legislature? What's going on with CTEDs right now?
That's a great question. As Dr. Wilson had just mentioned, that pendulum and for the value of a skilled workforce, I think is swung back so that people recognize that we need a skilled, competent talent pool to be ready to go into the workforce. Vicente had mentioned to me at times too, the aging workforce that are coming out, those workers that are aging out. So CTEDs, I believe, are coming into their own. We're having a national conversation, and we've been having it for about 3 years now, about the value of skilled workers. And college is not for everybody. I know I saw a comment in there that, Mike Rowe has been a, staunch advocate for skilled workers. And so we realize, and the industry realize, that if we don't deal with this shortage or aging population of skilled workforce, then we're gonna potentially be in a troublesome issue, in a troublesome area. So it's being recognized, it's being valued. Dr. Wilson said, it's changed, from when we talked about vocational. No longer is CTE thought about as the greasy fingernails and you come home with dirty clothes. We're talking about specialized industries like cyber criminology. We're talking about healthcare industries now that are augmented by artificial intelligence. We're talking about highly technical, skilled training that go beyond just thinking about maybe that old shop floor or the dusty, the dusty environment, because students now are learning and earning those trades and those skills certification for a highly technical, highly specialized environment. So we're coming into our own. I think they're growing. Each one of the CTEDs are growing. Every single one of the 14 across the state. We feel that there's an enthusiasm. We keep getting reinforced as the value of the work that we're doing. Gary, every time we talk to somebody about a CTED, career and technical education district, if they haven't heard about it, usually the first reaction is, wow, I've never heard of this. And the second one is, how come I didn't have anything like this when I was in high school? So there's a tremendous momentum and a shift for the value of CTEDs in the state of Arizona.
I do think, and I'll just speak for EVIT, Gary, I do think that CTEDs, as Kevin said, have really entered into a space in which I think the value added people are realizing in ways that has never been before. With that, I think also comes some responsibility. I'll speak for EVIT, some responsibility to make sure that we deliver on what we're saying that we're going to deliver on. And, for me, the currency is the credential that the student earns. What I believe in is that students that leave CTED should carry with them a license or certification that gives them the opportunity to go straight into the workforce. And our programs are wonderful programs on so many different levels, but ultimately having the accountability for industry certification, I think is going to matter, because as we position ourselves to be one of the legs that helps support workforce development is supported by individuals that have the skills as defined by the certifications upon completion of the program. And so I think for EVIT, one of the things that we're going to continue to wrestle with is how can we provide the learning opportunities our students deserve, give them the experiences that they need, but also make sure that they earn the industry certifications that are actually the credential of the currency that gives them the leg up upon completing the program. And I think that's an area that I think we at EVIT have not necessarily spent the kind of time we needed to over the years on, but we are currently focusing on, because ultimately that is what the return on investment is from our legislature, those credentials, those currencies that actually lead toward workforce development.
And so an 18-year-old kid who graduates from EVIT could go into the workforce.
Absolutely.
Is that true?
Mhm.
Absolutely, or go on to post-secondary education for the area for which they're interested. And we actually have students that have completed a 2-year program at a CTED are more likely to go on to college and complete their college education in the study for which they've completed their CTE program. Hey, Gary, I noticed a couple of comments in regards to what I had mentioned before as a statewide. So can I go back and clarify that a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. So just as a consortium level, there's 14 CTEDs throughout the state. We all collaborate. 14 individual CTEDs, although they operate independently, we're structured and we collaborate and we practice consistent practices with one singular focus, and that's what Dr. Wilson mentioned before, and that's earning a certification and contributing to the economic development. So it's not one system, it's 14 individual JTEDs or CTEDs across the state collaborating together to promote and lift up career and technical education throughout the state. And it's just not the CTEDs that are doing that. We're doing that, individually amongst ourselves. We're also promoting CTE within our member districts or those satellite districts for students that are taking courses, maybe not within a CTED, but are just taking courses at their high school, the CTE courses at their high school.
And can you explain the structure a little bit and how you work with the high schools?
Sure. So there's actually 2 different models for which under the CTE umbrella. One is that we refer to as a central campus or a central program model. That's where students go to a particular campus, like EVIT, like WestMech, like WAVE, and they learn their skills at one particular location. The other way that we support CTE is with students taking what we call in their member districts or their satellite districts, and they're taking their CTE courses on their high school as well. Now we contribute and we support both of those models. So a student in CTE doesn't necessarily have to come to a main campus. We're also going to support them at their satellite or their homeschool campus as well. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both, but we're all under one umbrella of career and technical education. Students are either coming to their main campus or a central program campus, or they're remaining on their own high school campus and taking a CTE program for which they receive their math, science, social studies, and English.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And so I'm going to take a question from the audience. And I think it's an interesting question. How does the CTE programming that CTEDs offer differ from that offered by community colleges?
I think that's a really, that's a good question. You know, at EVIT, there's two different parts to our CTED, those that serve the high school students. So the difference is that while a student is attending high school, he or she can earn the industry certification as part of their academic pathway while in high school versus having to pay tuition post-high school for a program. So that's one difference. In our adult education program, it is tuition-based, and much like the community colleges. And so in that respect, it's not significantly different. I think one of the things that we talk about at EVIT all the time is that, you know, our state needs multiple rivers filling up a lake. And so community college plays a role in that, and CTED plays a role in that. And we play a role in that on the high school side, but also on the adult side. And honestly, too, one of the things that we found is if we have a student in our satellite programs that gets interested in welding, as an example, and finishes the program here at our central campus, he or she may be more comfortable continuing on with us post high school simply because of the success they've had with us. And so I think there's real similarities. There's some differences, but I think the overarching issue is that it's going to take all of us doing the good work that needs to be done to build capacity in the state to meet the need that Vicente and his industry have, the mining industry has, the technology industry has. It's not a one shop that solves the problem. I think it's collectively all of us.
Staying on the current status of EVIT, CTEDs, so many acronyms.
There are.
Flying around this one. We spoke the other day, Kevin, about you know, the cost of running CTEDs and how they've increased over the years. And can you explain why it's more expensive to run a CTED these days?
Sure, absolutely. So again, the intent is for students to be able to participate and leave a program seamlessly that goes right into the shop, right into the place of business. And so we, as CTEDs, duplicate an industry standards equipment list. And so just imagine if students were attending a barbering program, we have to equip everything that would be required for that student in order to learn those skills and make it look exactly like a barbering program or a medical assistant or surgical technology. So aviation is one of them too. In order for the one of the programs to be signed off because we have an FAA certification, we have to have every nut and bolt in place prior to even enrolling students into that program. So that's a tremendous, tremendous cost. Again, the idea is for those students to come right out of the shop, right out of the field, right into Vicente's hands, and then he'd be able to say, you know what, yeah, I have confidence that these students have the skills. I don't need to retool. We don't need to reskill these students. They have everything they absolutely need. And that does cost money. That there is an effort. It does require additional materials. In fact, that's even one in the compliance indicators too, is that the CTED programs require additional materials that are in addition to a normal program. So we are expected to be able to provide them with a higher level of equipment, a higher level of the essential components they would be able to need. And so if you just imagine everything that one of those programs would need, whether it's tractors, trailers, heavy diesel, we have programs at EVIT that is diesel mechanic. And so not every high school can have a or a couple in order for students to be able to practice on and learn their skills. So that takes a tremendous amount of investment. So there is a requirement. And it does cost more.
And then there's your instructors as well, right?
Yeah, most definitely. I see Dr. Wilson shaking his head. We actually are competing with industry in order to employ our teachers. We hire the industry experts. It's easier for us to hire somebody that has the background and skilled knowledge and say, it's diesel mechanic, than hire a teacher and say, okay, now you're going to be proficient in diesel mechanic and teach our students. And so we have to compete directly with industry. And oftentimes they're making double, maybe even 3 times the amount of what a teacher would normally make in order for them to be able to come to one of our CTEDs and say, okay, yeah, I do have the skills and I'm going to teach. Now we're asking them to do it for a third of the rate for which they would normally make in industry. So we're tremendously challenged with that as well. And I think the community would only expect that we would hire the best, we hire those that are experts in the field. And so that's what we do. We respond to that. Now, it does become somewhat of a conundrum because, we can't hire a teacher and pay them $200,000 a year as much as we would like. And so by the grace of God, we've got people out there that want to teach, and they're doing a great job. But absolutely, Gary, that's one of the costs of doing business within a career and technical education district.
Are you getting people that are, like at the end of their career and decide they want to, pass on what they know, or, what's the profile of like your instructor?
I think we get them from all ranges, Gary. I think that some of our instructors are exactly what you just described, individuals that realize the skill set they have, they want to pass on to the next generation. And so they want to round out their career being able to do that. We have individuals also on the front end of their career that realize that in order for their industry to be robust, there's got to be a continued pipeline. So they want to be able to help support that so that their industry stays robust. I think that one of the things that we have found with the industry instructors is that the environment they create in the program they're in is very similar to the environment that industry is. And so when you have students that select a program, you naturally want an individual that has lived through that program, lived through that industry. So he or she can have the dialogue, the conversation, the atmosphere that reflects what that industry is. Because sometimes we find from our partners that individuals get the certifications, but they don't really realize what that industry is. And so they get into the industry and they find out that's not what they want. So the more we can create the environment that our students get to experience the industry, the better off we're preparing them for post-high school or post-adult training for our workforce. And the best way to do that is to have partners like Vicente, but also to have industry experts in the classroom teaching. And as Kevin said, that is incredibly expensive.
And, just because you're competent at something doesn't mean you can teach well. I mean, I would assume you guys got to invest a little money in teaching them how to teach, right?
So this is, it's interesting. That's a great point, Gary. One of the things that's a blessing and a curse is that at EVET, 98% of our students, our instructors, didn't go through the College of Education. That's a blessing. It's a curse that 90% of the instructors didn't go through the College of Education. So they have strong content knowledge, but not great pedagogy. So we've invested at EVET for our academic coaches to be able to kind of work with them shoulder to shoulder on helping build their capacity to be an instructor. One of the things we tell our instructors, though, is that the best way to have a classroom environment that's successful is to keep the kids engaged in a way that is meaningful to them. And so our instructors that's part of what their focus is that if our students are engaged in meaningful learning opportunities, a lot of the other stuff kind of works itself out. And we find that in traditional classrooms as well. And so for us, there is an investment on helping our teachers become better teachers because that's not their profession. But what we try not to do is limit the uniqueness of who they are as an industry expert, because in many ways that solves a lot of the issues in terms of engagement with students.
Okay. So we also talked a little bit the other day about, the type of student that's coming or what students are like nowadays. I think you were talking about teaching them the soft skills, and that's part of what you do now.
Yeah, I tell this story all the time. My son had the pleasure of being at EVET for 2 years in the automotive program, and it was the best experience he had in high school. The certificates he earned, he'll be able to utilize the rest of his life. The skills he learned, will be able to utilize the rest of his life, whether he spends his entire life in the automotive industry or not. What I was surprised about, though, and you would have thought I would have realized this because I'm a superintendent, is that probably the most beneficial thing for my son was he had to leave his home high school for half a day, 2 days, or half a day for 2 years in a row. and go to an environment with kids that he didn't grow up with. Some were darker, some were lighter, some were richer, some were poorer. And he had to learn how to problem solve, team build, collaborate, socialize, interact with in a way that allowed that program to be successful, allowed him to be successful. That skill there is going to afford him opportunities that I didn't realize. And it's those soft skills, Gary, we find from our industry. You know, they can finish up some of the technical training, but do our students know it's important to be here on time, to dress for the industry, to engage with customers in a way that keeps those customers coming back as repeat customers. All those little things that actually matter more than what people realize, we inherently do simply because of the structure at the central campus that we have.
And I'm going to ask another question here from the audience. Any thoughts on how we push CTE EVIT programs down to middle schools?
Yeah, so that's a great question. One of the things that we're doing at EVIT is our recruiters. So you asked a little bit earlier, how do we get folks engaged? And Vicente did a great job talking about the work Chase does on an early grade levels through construction days. We have recruiters at EVIT that spend time on our partnering campuses, high school campuses, helping students better understand the opportunities. Recently, over the past 2 years, we've started having our recruiters participate in the middle schools as well. Because what we've come to realize is that if a student doesn't have a good idea of interest by the time they get to high school, we've almost missed that window. So from our perspective, part of what we're doing is getting some of our programming and recruiting at the middle level, similar to what Vicente is doing, so that students early on get a sense of what's possible. We had a elementary school come and visit us last year. And it was wonderful, the notes they wrote to our recruiter. And one of the notes said that she never realized that she could have the possibility of being in a program like this, and she can't wait to get to high school to participate. When you start setting that mindset in 6th, 7th, 5th, 8th grade, then the opportunity for those students to really have meaningful learning and outcomes is much more attainable.
And would you agree that there's always been kind of a stigma attached to the, blue collar or, even, anything that wasn't, college related? Are we getting over that?
Hey, Vicente, you want to take a crack at that one?
I like to think so. It's certainly something that's there. Working with your hands, getting dirty and stuff like that is certainly a stigma out there. But hey, as a rewarding career to be able to walk out of a program such as EVIT at the age of 18 and go into a fairly high-paying position without any student loans or debt, I think in 10 years or so, there's that's not going to be much of a stigma anymore when you've been able to really have a great opportunity to create wealth for yourself, for your family, and really put yourself on a great path moving forward and make a really positive impact on your community, because this is a big need out there. And there's a lot of buildings, a lot of schools that don't get built without this technical education. So I think all in all, stigma aside, it's really a rewarding place that will equally reward you in your pocketbook if you so let it and take that opportunity out there. So I think we're getting over it, hopefully.
Well, that's good to hear. So let's talk about the future. I'm sure you guys, being a leader of a school, you got to be thinking 5-10 years down the road. You guys got long-term plans. What are you seeing as, where CTEDs are headed right now?
No, that's Gary, if I could answer that question, I'd be a millionaire. I think that CTE offers an opportunity for every student. Like I just said, I think that the future is wrapped around that. I can't, I told you this story once before, but I was talking to a student in one of our construction classes and asking him how it was going. And he said he really liked being here. And I said, well, why, but he said he might not be able to come back for the second semester. And I said, how come? And he said, well, he's really struggling in math and he's not really good at math. And then we started talking a little bit and we talked about how much geometry and algebra is in our construction program. And the student was flourishing in the content and concepts of mathematics in the construction field. And I share that because I think part of the future is to begin looking at ways in which we can embed some of our core content standards and credits within the CTE programs, so that a student who may not necessarily thrive in a traditional math class can certainly potentially learn geometry and algebra in our construction class. A student that may not do exceptionally well in a standalone anatomy and physiology class may see huge value in that opportunity in a pre-nursing program. So I think part of the future looking forward is how can we have CTE not just be a standalone opportunity, but actually begin to be the opportunity that we've said as educators we want for all of our students, where it's more hands-on application-based learning versus regurgitation of information. I think that's one area that CTE is going to grow into. I think CTE will ever evolve based on the business and industries. I know that what was viable and needed 5 years ago isn't going to be viable and needed 5 years from now. I think CTEs have a space to lean into that would be a continuation of developing the adult education. I think that the work that we're doing with our adults, the ability to offer an associate degree, is another step towards more streams filling up the lake. But having said all that, Gary, I come back to the same thing I said about 15 minutes ago. I do think that we at EVIT in particular have to be mindful of outcomes, and outcomes matter. And so outcomes as measured by industry certification, outcomes measured by success on the state administered test, outcomes as measured by students that matriculate from the first program to the second program, second sequence of a course. So I think, the future of CTE is bright. I think that we have the ability to lean in ways that we haven't done before. I think we'll continue to evolve the programs we offer, but I think ultimately what will matter more is, are we committed to having outcomes that truly move the needle? Not just good, nice programs, but actually truly move the needle. Because to Vicente's point, if our state is in dire strait for the trades, those trades are measured and those students are offered the opportunity by the industry certification they earn.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the industries that, semiconductor industry. Are you guys having to, the CTEDs or EVIT in particular, having to adjust to that? We've got this growth of the semiconductors here in the Phoenix area.
So I'll speak real briefly to EVIT, then Kevin, you may have knowledge of what's happening across the other parts of the state. So one of the things, because of the semiconductor, we had a company come to us and ask if our students had the ability to get trained in orbital welding. And I didn't even know what that was. But the fact of the matter is that the orbital welding is the welding that's used to build those semiconductor plants. And so our students then the ability to pivot based on what industry needs and offer orbital welding as part of our program is what we're prepared to do. In doing that, though, there's training and up training that we have to do with our instructors. And so we're in the process of doing that now so that our students, when they exit the program, will have that certification as well, so that they can be able to be utilized to help meet the need of the growing semiconductor industry in the state.
I think that's a great example. When large companies or even small companies move into a community, one of the first things that they're going to ask or looking at is economic development. Is there a talent pool for skilled workers? And so it's incredibly important for us to be able to listen to our communities, talk to our community leaders about what are those industry needs, what are they hearing from the industry partners as to the pool of talented workers that they need as well. So I think it's a more of a geographic type of situation. Each one of the 14 CTEDs are specialized in serving their unique community needs. Those that are in Cochise are a little bit different than they are in Kayenta, or maybe Steady and down in Yuma is a little bit different than it's in Wave. So each one of them are geographically laser focused on what they can do to help that tremendous that economic development within their geographic area.
So wanted to talk a little bit about the legislature and what you guys got cooking with the legislature right now. I understand that there's Senate Bill 1272. Kevin, can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Senate Bill 1272. One of the things in order for us to be able to get funded for our 9th grade students is the student needs to be enrolled in the 11th grade. We're skipping a complete year and enrolled in the 11th grade in order to be able to receive funding for that student back in the 9th grade. So Senate Bill 1272 eliminates that, meaning that we don't have to wait a year in order for us to be funded for that 9th grade program. We can be funded right away. Another aspect is that it holds CTEDs accountable to a particular occupational list that's generated by the OEO, Office of Economic Opportunity. That list is universal across the state. It eliminates the list for which we have to limit ourselves regardless of the needs of that community. My battery is running low, Gary. I hope I'm still connected.
Okay, we've just got a few more minutes and we'll keep our fingers crossed on that.
Yeah.
Um,
Oops.
so, as far as I guess funding is concerned, we just had the three university presidents on here a couple of weeks ago, and they were one of them just came right out and said we just need more money. I mean, are you guys getting funded adequately, or here's your chance to make a pitch if you need money?
So I'll speak on EVIT's behalf, and then Kevin, you can speak on the behalf of the consortia. Money matters as long as it's connected to outcomes. I don't think having more dollars without having an expectation that the return on investment of those dollars is the currency the student needs, I don't know that that's good practice or good policy. And so I think money does matter. I think it matters in a sense. I think it matters as long as it's connected to outcomes that are measurable. So, from EVIT's perspective, I think, until we figure out some of our systems in a way that allows us to be the kind of stewards that we expect ourselves to be, we're going to be okay for a bit of time. To Kevin's point, I think the ninth grade funding is a variable that's impactful across the state. And to that, I agree and appreciate. But I just think more money without outcome expectations isn't good policy or practice.
Now, can you explain a little bit more about that ninth grade funding? Because I'm not quite clear on it myself.
Yeah. So the way the statute currently reads is that students in ninth grade don't get automatic funding. They
Okay.
wind up getting funded if they persist into a program their junior year that's on the in-demand list, and then that's retroactively funded.
So stop you real quick. So a ninth grader can go to EVIT, but he's just not getting the funding.
So a ninth grader can take a satellite class, yes, and they're not getting funded as a ninth grader. The district would eventually get funded for that student retroactively if he or she persists into a program in the 11th grade. I think one of the real challenges with that is that makes the assumption that students stay in the same school all 4 years. And we know that there is a mobility rate that students have. And so if a student is ninth grade in one of our high schools and then is in 11th grade in a high school in the West Valley, takes a program that qualifies for the ninth grade funding, the retroactive funding, how does that get tracked and how does that get measured? And I think that the thought process is, if there's value in the funding, then why isn't it funded at the ninth grade level versus the retroactive funding?
And they're also, I think today there's going to be some debate on it, on the aggregate spending limit. That affects you as well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a variable that affects, every school district, every traditional school district in the state of Arizona. And so I think that's an issue that we all can agree on needs to get resolved, or all of us, not just schools, but communities, will have a difficult time in March.
Are you planning for that if they don't have it done by then?
Oh, yes. I mean, by statute, we have to plan for it. And so, the planning for it is not necessarily going to be the most enjoyable experience for us or for anybody. But we wouldn't be good stewards if we didn't have a plan for it. Our hope, though, is that there can be an agreement reached so that doesn't become the reality. Because the work that we talked about that we want to do, the work that we think we can do to help move the state forward, would be significantly impeded by that. So we're optimistic and hopeful that'll get resolved, but obviously have planned in case it doesn't.
So I got another question here from the audience. To what extent are CTEDs partnering with the public sector, highlighting opportunities for students to translate these skills into the public sector as well as business and industry? So I'm thinking maybe the Department of Transportation, I don't know, some of these agencies.
Kevin, you want to take that?
Sure. Yeah, we also know that the public sector, and so I'm going to make a kind of an assumption that it does mean something like the Department of Transportation, or maybe Department of Child Services, something to that effect as well. We are a public education agency, and so we do collaborate, and we are connected to those other public agencies as well. So whether it's experts in industries, for which we're partnered with. We do look for those as well. But it's similar to what we have with our private industry partners as well. So those relationships that help us to drive the quality of our program, the pedagogy, the actual innovations that's happening within the state and those state agencies as well. We at EVIT, I'm going to speak a little bit from EVIT's perspective. We have a very good association with the Department of Child Services just because of something that we have some exciting news that's coming up too. And I'll let Dr. Wilson speak to that. But so yeah, as a public agency, we're tied to all those other public agencies as well.
So I would thank you, Kevin. I'd be remiss, Gary, if I didn't share the work. We talk about at EVIT that we can change lives by loving our students and serving our communities. And there's so many on-roads and off-ramps to that. And one of the things that we believe inherently is viable is CTE being able to lean into the foster youth and give them the opportunities that they need to be successful post their foster experience. And what we found is that there's about 33% of foster youth complete high school. And yet about 1,200 of those individuals age out of the system each year. And so when you start looking at the statistics, what that means is problematic on so many different levels. And so we're fortunate that we were given the resources to build a residency hall here, a 64-bed residency hall in which foster youth that are aging out can opt in to stay with us and participate. If they haven't finished high school, they can take their GED. But more importantly, to be able to be part of some of our programs so that they can earn industry certifications and have the ability to have a skill and a trade that pays a livable wage and really gives them a leg up and a future. And what we're so proud of is not just a future for those individuals. We know that the greatest predictor of success of a child is the success of their parents. And so the ability to give foster youth the opportunity to get industry certification and have an opportunity to have a meaningful employment not only will benefit them, but benefit their children, their grandchildren. And when you start looking at how you change systems, it's systemically. And so we're hopeful that what we're hoping to accomplish bears the fruit that we believe it can. And we're excited that we're going to open the facility hopefully about a year from now.
Now, you guys talked a little bit about, what you do to get kids interested, excited about, pursuing CTED or pursuing industries that are taught at CTEDs. What efforts are being made to reach parents and convince them that CTE careers can be a good fit for their child?
So I'll do my spiel quick, Kevin, and I'll let you. The greatest resource we have is the testimonials of those who have participated and the families that we've touched. I can send a communication to parents, and I'm a superintendent. That doesn't matter. But when a parent hears from another parent, the work that was accomplished and the experience the student had, that's the greatest recruiter. And so what we tell our parents all the time is, please, EVIT is the best kept secret, which is a tragedy. Help your neighbors know about us. Help your neighbors understand about us. We need to do better in our communication, but truly it's the parent to parent conversation that sells what we do better than anything I can do. And Kevin, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. When we first started out at Steady 7 years ago, we were targeting students, and then we realized now maybe counselors, but actually the target audience was moms.
Mm-hmm.
In order for her to be able to say what's going to be, drag her son and daughter in and say, hey, you need to think hard about this, or aunts and uncles and grandparents for which students are living with. But it's the adult population that has a tremendous amount of influence on recruiting of students, and parent to parent. Word of mouth is generally, the best form of advertising. Would you recommend, a CTED to another, parent? So, absolutely, the parents are, and specifically mothers, are the ones that are helping us to recruit students. So whether it's expos that we had 2 weeks ago, whether it's letters specifically formatted to parents, whether it's looking at different opportunities where adults attend, looking at those opportunities to help students understand the benefits of what a career and technical education can do for them.
And honestly, too, and I hate to speak for Vicente, but it's even the partnerships that we have with business and industry.
Yeah.
When Vicente goes on to another project and talks about the work that they did here at EVIT, or the work that they're going to do over at Westmac, or the work that they're doing up in Pima JTED, that creates currency too. And so it's all those little pieces that allow us to try to recruit students in a way that's meaningful to them.
All right, gentlemen. Well, the hour's up. Great discussion. I enjoyed it. And just want to let our audience know that next Tuesday, we are going to be having another morning scoop, and it's going to be on what we mentioned just a few minutes ago, the aggregate expenditure limit, and that ought to be an exciting hour. And just want to thank Vicente Turan, Kevin Hines, and Dr. Wilson, and EVIT and Chase Building Team for sponsoring this and for joining us. And I want to thank the audience for tuning in and joining us and spending an hour of your time today. And hope everybody has a great day. And
Thank you, Gary.
sign-
Thank you to you too.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Gary.
Thank you, Gary.